In this one, what we're going to talk about is risk taking. And so what you just brought up in the last video was risk. And I'll explain
Risk
why.
in dating?
Risk in dating. We could have risks in jobs. We could have risks in friendships or relationships in general. So there's a lot that I want to get into in this discussion, but it's not going to be too long. But there are other decision-making formulas you could apply and risk-taking formulas. But one thing I've learned, and I mentioned this in another clip, is what Jim Collins mentions, a business development expert, mentions in Good to Great. He says the darts, throw tiny darts in the decisions that, towards the decisions or that you could make that help you to know whether or not you're on track. And before you make the full move. Now, I used to be the kind of person that made a full force move
For the person you wanted to date.
and well, not just that, but for jobs. Like one time I moved to Hawaii back in 2001. A lot of people wouldn't hire me if just anybody from Chicago if they didn't see that you were there. Once I moved to Chicago, they're like, okay, he's serious. Have an address. Now the jobs started coming. At that point, the jobs started coming. So within 6 weeks, I had 3 jobs, and I did it by showing up. So I think commitment. Davis and Palladino say this in Motivation, that, and I might have talked about it in another clip, direction, persistence, and arousal or interest. So the idea is that we want to make sure that we're committed towards whatever it is, and we got to put our money where our mouth is. That means if you say something's going to happen, make it happen.
So basically what you're saying is a lot of things in life we want, but if we don't commit to it, we're never going to achieve them. Whether it's a job, dating a certain person, or becoming successful within your own field. You have to commit yourself to it.
You got to commit yourself to it, and let me give you a quick example. I think what you just said is beautiful. I mean, I don't want to restate that because you hit it on its head. Because that's how you know through the commitment you can reevaluate the decisions. When I moved down here, all right, that week that I did, I got 3 offers. Well, it was the week within. There was that week, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, from applications and that I had sent in 3 months before, and they were all in Phoenix, Arizona.
Wow.
So there were different schools that were interested in me to hire me as a full-time teacher. They were interested in hiring me. That's 3 within a period of, I was hired, and I said, you know what? I told the lady, I said, sorry, the director, in general, I forget her title, I think it was the dean or director of academic affairs. I told her, I said that I would like to definitely keep in touch with you. I'm grateful that you considered me. Unfortunately, I'm here already. I've already paid the deposit on my apartment. I would like to commit. I've already accepted the offer. I'm down here. And I was getting ready to start teaching the following week, and I said I'm going to stay committed. And because you might say, well, this opportunity is better. You're in a relationship, the grass is always greener. And
Sure.
The one thing I've always seen people do, while you want to have a job before you find another job, you never want to be in a situation where you lost a job and then you don't have any backup plan. You always want to have.
But that time in your life you were explaining, wasn't it great that you were wanted in so many places at once?
Oh, it was amazing. This we're talking about 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that was incredible, and it felt like, okay, well, should I have been looking at Arizona? Now, to be honest with you, if Arizona, those positions had shown up first,
been there.
we would not be talking, because unless you had flown to Arizona. So I thought almost the universe there must have been something. All the signs were saying Phoenix.
It's back to there's a reason for everything.
There's a reason for everything, and so what I committed to my boss for, even when I shook his hand, I was grateful. When I think I gave him a present in a card, and I think the other guy too, who I talked to, is amazing. He built me up, like he helped me to do a presentation, like I had a great presentation. I came in energized, wowed them. They got down to 3 finalists. They hired me. And then I knew that I was moving. So the point was, I was excited about the process, and when I shook his hand, there was this. I knew that this is where I needed to be, even though I was unsure about the city.
You committed yourself to it.
I committed to myself to it, and then when you know how they say, burn your bridges. There's no going back.
Yeah, don't burn your bridges.
Well, you don't want to burn your bridges, but the idea is that what they're really saying when they say that, people are saying, burn your bridges, don't burn your bridges or anything. What they're saying is and people saying that when you do burn your bridges. What they're saying is don't look at, when you make a decision, they say it's Latin to not look at other possibilities. So the idea is that when you make a decision, can I go forward, not half-baked, You know what I mean? Like with a half-baked or half-cooked idea. In other words, I'm going in full force with the idea that this is the decision I made. Now, this goes to Jim Collins' point where he's saying the small darts. You might make a small, in other words, I'm doing the trial. We talked about the excursions, right? The scouting you mentioned.
Right.
But when you're taking risks, but then now I'm putting in my resources, and now I'm going in this
To
way.
the younger viewers, when we say burn your bridges, it's the old saying, what goes around comes around.
Yeah, so we were looking at it differently. So do you see when people are saying burning your bridges as in not going backwards? That's something different than burn your bridges as far as connections. Can you explain?
Right.
Can you explain that?
Well, when you get out, this can be in your social life, in your work life. If there's a particular instance or person where basically maybe you don't agree with them, or you don't respect them, or you happen to be fired, or you're not respecting them as a friend, it's amazing how that person come back around in your life as maybe a boss, a decision maker on your job,
Oh, yeah.
somebody that you have to call on in business, somebody that you have to work with within any environment, in a friendship, in a social group.
It's so important that you're saying this because even when you lose a job, when that happens, or it's not easy. That's role strain when a boss has to deliver the news and you've given it your best shot, or you've worked on a performance evaluation, you had coaching. I know I've been there. You can work on your strengths and still stay cordial and positive and grateful.
Yes.
And very respectful to the fact that thank you for having given me the time, the period, and for helping me to be doing my best in this role.
We were just talking about this earlier today, how even in a relationship,
right,
even if there's somebody you're dating for a few months,
right,
and it doesn't work out, but you've enjoyed it, don't get nasty, don't get disrespectful. Leave as a gentleman, or
be classy about it.
Be classy, exactly, because that makes you look so much better in life, because that person can come back around in your life.
Totally makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yes. Be classy at all times.
Being classy helps you to. It doesn't. It seem to. It just helps you to get.
And it makes you feel better.
Sure does, doesn't it?
You know, because let's face it, if you're out there searching for a job, or you're out there dating different people, who says that that job or that person you're dating is going to be the one that works out for you?
But you could learn a lesson from
everybody.
Yeah,
in
so
every job.
You talked about this in dating situations where you're dating someone. What are they doing? Spending a third of the time talking about their ex, or how there's a legal situation going on, and
With
because
their
that's
children.
what's on their mind.
Yes.
It makes it sound like while you want to be empathetic, they haven't taken care of, and maybe they're not fully engaged. So when you make decisions, you're settled, and some things are ongoing. Finding a way to compartmentalize. I used to not be a huge believer in compartmentalization, but I've changed. Like learning how to balance your life and your
Balance.
energies.
Huge.
So important, because when you're taking risks, then you can kind of say, well, I got this area under control. I've taken, these are the decisions I've made here. So let me see, now I have the emotional wherewithal, the resources. How am I going to take risk in this area? You have the energy and concentration and focus.
I dated a lady once for almost 2 years, and at one point she says, you're really balanced.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. She says there's a lot of things you have interest in. You don't seem to really get rattled by a lot of things. You're really balanced. Not that she was saying I'm perfect, which I'm not, but she says you have balance, which allows you to enjoy different aspects of life and appreciate different things.
So you could take the risk. That's a compliment. So when you take a risk in dating someone or asking someone out, you might get rejected. She might have asked you out, or you might have asked her out. I think if somebody says no, and then you get feedback, just like if somebody doesn't hire you. I remember getting feedback about that, and and one time years ago, and even in dating situations, if somebody's not interested, it's helpful to get feedback if they can offer.
Even on your job.
Yeah.
Diversity and thought.
Oh, so important.
Everybody has a different thought process. If you take the time to not only speak your opinion, but listen to everybody else, you can come away with you can mesh them all together and make everything better.
Well, it's interesting you say that because there's something in developmental psychology that we talk about called the social convoy principle. It's the social convoy. These are the people that go with you through time. It's kind of nice to have a support group around you, people in your work life, personal life. What I've noticed is when you're having the most fun at work. Now, not that you're socializing and partying, you're getting down to business.
You're working together.
You're working together, but you're working in a way that you like to work. And that you're getting results according to your style.
Sure.
You're still growing because you don't want to not be challenged. But what I've learned is it's better to find the way that you work. And I've learned that, you know what, I'm not as good currently in certain administrative tasks. Like, I got to get better with the administration. But I think I'm a very good teacher. And there's certain, I've been told, there's certain features that I can do in the class, like certain things that I'm really good at, other things that I don't perform as well.
We all have our strengths.
Yeah, so maximizing your strengths and weaknesses, trying to minimize them, but you take a look at them, get the support, but then your risks that you make are not from out of deficit, like Maslow talks about. It's coming from growth. Like, I'm working on the growth, I'm building myself up, and so then when you make decisions, they don't feel as risky because it's what I love anyway, and here's how this is an area I want to explore, this is where I want to grow, I want to get to the next level in this career, or start my own business, or whatever it is. You follow what I'm saying? It's like that one guy I told you about in the other clip who quit a real solid job.
It's going back to taking risks.
Yeah, he built his piano playing. He wanted to hang out with jazz musicians. He was taking the risk to be in the social convoy of people. He didn't want to hang out with the Motorola people. And I love Motorola products. I'm saying he was getting paid well, great benefits, but you have to take the risks at some point because you're not living your truth at that time. At that time when he was, there would have been no right or wrong answer.
How many times have you had a job
and
you just felt it wasn't the right fit? How many times did you date somebody 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and even though you were getting along, you knew in the long term it wasn't the right fit?
You already knew that.
And it wasn't because that was a bad person, there wasn't anything wrong with them, you just knew in the long term it wasn't going to be the right fit.
But sometimes
which doesn't make that person bad or wrong. And that's when we go back to talking about leaving or breaking up or leaving a job. Don't burn the bridge. Do it with class.
You always want to do it with class and find out what you're grateful for. And even if there's something going on in the company, like I've had people leave situations where there were hiring decisions or different situations that they didn't agree with. They've told me this in some other courses that I taught in the past, like years ago or just even recently. What they would say is, you still got to leave in a positive note because you don't want to do anything risky that'll affect your future career. Like somebody told me in a live college where I was teaching that there was an unfair situation with management and hiring, and where they were treated in a certain way. I mean, assert your rights. But what she ended up having to do was just to talk to HR, and she handled the situation. But she was staying after class talking to me about it. But the risks that you can take if you have the backing of the rules, policies, and procedures of a company or organization, then you don't feel it's as risky to talk.
Don't you feel we live in a more sensitive culture?
But you yeah.
I mean, really.
More PC.
Everybody's very sensitive about a lot of things.
But I think we're at the end of the day, being respectful, and treating people in a certain way, and
like the old saying, treat people the way you want to be treated.
So important.
It's pretty easy. It's a pretty easy rule to follow.
But what about risks in terms of friendships or finances? Or we were talking, we did a whole other clip on finances. Why is it people make gambling decisions, or they gamble with their money? They do these impulsive kinds of things. Besides the psychological reasons, I'm sure, biochemical and others. There's borderline, there's histrionic personality disorders, and people can be. There's certain bipolar disorder, for example. Where does the impulsiveness come from with the risk taking? Why are some people more conservative and fiscally responsible, and some other people that blow it? It could be tied into parenting too.
Lord, that could be a 2-hour conversation.
Well,
There's so many reasons.
Diane Baumrind has a parenting model called the permissive model. She has the 4 parts, right? Authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, and neglectful. The permissive one. Or it could be the authoritarian one, where if the person's too restricted, then all of a sudden when they get the chance...
Well, you brought up gambling. A lot of people just like to go gamble because they enjoy it. It's like their form of recreation.
So they're blinded to the risks?
No, it's like it's no more than going to dinner and spending $60 or a movie 25 bucks. You're going there. If you go and say, okay, I'm just going to gamble a certain amount of money, that's my entertainment for the night.
How about endorphin and dopamine rushes? There's an addiction. There's a tendency to get pleasure.
Oh,
The
sure.
pain pleasure dynamic that Freud and
Yeah,
also.
sure. But you can do that with all kinds of things. We can do that in the gym.
Well,
We can get that in the gym.
but is it? But what I'm saying is you planned your workout. In other words, you had an idea before you went to the gym.
Mhm.
Before you go to the casino, that's where your freedom is.
Yes.
You can restrict. You can say, well, I'm only going to have $35. You can have an accountability person. Like I think the most I've ever gambled.
Well, that's
was
why
like,
there's an ATM machine in the casinos
oh,
for the people who.
I didn't know that, are there?
Oh, of course there are.
So that the people
I
that keep.
need to get you out more.
Well, hang on. I know from industrial organizational psychology that they actually, and which is part of one of my degrees, there was a concentration in there. They don't have clocks. They have dull carpets,
Sure.
and they have dull things. They want to dull your senses. They don't want you to be so
It's
perceptive.
escapism.
Yeah, they want you to make poor decisions.
Just like taking your like taking your family, your children to an amusement park. Once you get behind them gates, it's escapism. You don't see a lot of clocks. You're getting away from daily life. You're doing the same thing in the casino. You're doing the same thing when you go to a movie. You're escaping, right?
So
You're
important.
escaping the everyday realities. So, to your point about the casino, you said you go there with an idea of mind how much money to spend. But there's still that ATM machine there that if you change your
triggers.
mind, the trigger's like, you know what, maybe I'll go for another 20 or 40.
So your logical part
Yeah.
is
And, maybe I'll go another 20 or 40 and I'll win and just get me back to even and I'll go home.
in psychology they call that the gambler's fallacy. It's a zero-sum proposition. The house always wins. So you might be up, you might be down. It'll balance out, but you can win in certain cases. But the theory that each successive attempt builds on the next it screws up our decision making. There are
Sure.
different attribution errors that we can make as well. Heuristics and algorithms could be skewed.
Sure.
So what I think helps with decision making is looking at what other people have done, looking at how you feel, and remember how you feel is not necessarily comfortable. I mean, the right decision is very subjective because you can see what other people are doing, but as you mentioned, we talk about road trips versus flying as a decision, going on vacation. There's no right or wrong. Albert Ellis talks about this, a cognitive theorist, a great one. He says that there must be he says that one of the irrational thoughts, how to refuse to make yourself
Mhm.
miserable about anything. He has 11 irrational beliefs he talks about in his other works as well.
You make a decision when you're asking somebody out. All right, does this person have children, man or woman? Do they have children at home? Have they been divorced once, twice, or 3 times?
But there's no wrong answer.
There's no wrong answer. It's what fits you and what you think might work for you.
And you can evaluate based on the feedback.
Right.
Is this more of a direction? If you're aware, if you have a value system, you can say, well, you know what? I didn't like that this person did this. Can I live with this?
And you're evaluating these things based on past experiences. If you've had bad experiences with certain people that fall within different categories,
You don't get the best.
you say, well, do I want to go down that road again?
And you might not want to.
Same with a job. Do I want to go down that type of road again? Do I want to get into a different profession? Yes.
But remember, people have 5 to 7 jobs and 20 careers in their lifetime. And Amy Warzaniski says we have a job, then you go to a calling. I've talked about this in another clip. And then you go to a calling. Job, career,
Are you
and
saying
calling.
it's
So
like-
things can build on each other.
You're saying it's like the guy who has 7 wives in 20 years, huh?
that could definitely be the case.
But we
change our
ju-
thinking.
We
with
change our
maturity.
thinking, but we judge a lot of things by our past experience and things we've heard.
Hormonal changes,
Hormone-
family experiences,
Hormonal
cultural-
change, that's huge.
They're-
That's huge.
Because research also shows that men become more expressive after age 45 and women become more assertive after age 45. This is just the average. So there's a personality shift. There can be a
Yes.
clashing in relationships because hormonally we're changing and psychologically, interpersonally, and then intrapsychically we're changing.
And
So
society
all these
has
things are changing.
taken-
Nutrition can change.
Society has taken man and women and made more of a gray area. I don't mean from a sexual standpoint. I mean from your responsibilities and your different. Look how many divorced women are out there raising their families. I mean, they've had to take on more responsibilities.
Well, they call this in sociology the double shifts, right? The women that are putting on there's double shifts and there's extra strain. I'm talking to my financial advisor.
Sure.
And so when they get the additional support, or just like a single father, that's the same thing, right? With the kid, if you have another income to help you out or it kind of feels
Sure.
less stressful, you might make different
Yeah.
decisions. My financial advisor mentioned that people make different decisions when they have more possibilities.
Sure.
When you see the possibility or see the way, and sometimes you hadn't, and I know we talked about the importance of the flexibility of how, but when you're making decisions, when you can see the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
it helps you to kind of make that
Mhm.
decision. But looking at the long term, the short term goals, the midterm and long term goals, so the 0 to 1, 1 to 5, and 5 and beyond, it helps to kind of see, well, knowing what I now know, and things are going to change, but if this is how it was going to be 10 years, would I want to have this decision now?
Sure.
That long time, and Brian Tracy calls this thinking
Mhm.
back to the present.
Sure.
I mean,
we talk about the women we meet, how they're stressed because they have to take care of the family, they have to work, they have to do the cleaning, the laundry, they have to do so many things. They are stressed.
and they're thinking towards the relationships.
And
They
there's
don't make
and there's the financial stress.
so the decision
Divorce
making.
divorce causes financial stress for the man and the woman.
But don't you think that if you can have clear decision making, then you're saying that the emotional energy is freed, so they can automate their thinking in other areas because it's already taken care of. Just like if you're paying, Richard Bach talks about this in Automatic Millionaire, something I do anyway, have bills paid automatically. You don't have to think about it as much. You might minimally manage.
But you still have to think about it to make sure it's in that bank account.
Well, sure,
Yes.
but you can automate it and set it up
Yeah.
to where things are taken care of for you. In the same way with the relationship, somebody can give you 110% if I've taken care of the other decisions in other areas,
Sure.
other responsibilities. Now my energy's here. You still need to focus on your other priorities,
Sure, right.
but you can tell when people are present, and
Yes.
the decisions they make are higher quality, rather than reactive and kind of.
Mm-hmm.
They can be more productive decisions or more, and especially talking to friends, life coaches, psychologists, therapists,
Mhm.
and then going. I've learned there's no, as Albert Ellis I mentioned earlier, said there's invariably the stress comes from thinking you have to find the best decision, and you know what I mean. Invariably, people
For
think
having
that
options.
for having options, and you have many options, but the idea, and Barry Schwartz talks about this in the paradox of choice, and obviously he didn't before this research. Before what he mentioned in his book, there were other psychologists that actually talked about how when you give people many options, they feel paralyzed
Yes.
in choice making. So you want to get it down. What are salespeople doing? Asking you either or questions, black or white thinking types of questions. They want to
You
get
bring
you
up
to
a
move.
good point. You can have several options and they can all be great options, all positive options, but there's the stress of picking the right option. But then you have the other side where there's options, but they're all negative, and that's doubly stressful.
Well, the idea is being content with what you have. I bought a pair of headphones, those Beats headphones. How they had a promotion at the gym. And then they had different color choices. I was pretty clear on the color choice. But then a week or two later, they had the new model coming in. I'm like, well, this sounds better.
Yeah.
And I was kind of shocked that why didn't I know I didn't have the choice at the time. So then you got to reevaluate. And I said, well, I choose to be happy with the ones I bought 2 weeks ago. Now, the research shows, psychological research shows that people that justify the reasons for why they made the original decision tend to be happier. But if you compare, this is why comparison is, you've got to be very careful. If you compare, if there's no real huge cost-benefit savings or, yeah, the sound is better, but if you feel disappointed and you feel less willing to, in other words, you're not going the other way, now you feel regret at your buyer's remorse.
Mhm.
And so what people use is justifications in the other way to kind of minimize the cognitive dissonance.
It's like buying
And-
that fancy car you wanted, maybe a little more money than you wanted to spend, but
Which
after,
one you're just talking about in general?
in general, any car,
like
any
fancy
car,
car.
yeah.
Which one's he talking about?
Well, you go buy a new car and you're all thrilled. You got a brand new car. You got the new car smell. And even though the payment's a little high,
Unless you're buying it outright, right?
yeah,
You can be buying it outright. You don't have to be buying it.
rich guy like you.
Well,
you know,
wait,
so-
come on.
So, but after 5, 6 months of payments, that newness wears off, and you're not so sure you should have spent that money on the car.
Well, you always had because but with the information you had at the time,
Yes.
you did the best you could, right?
No,
a lot of people talk
No,
about this.
because I've talked to many car salesmen. Did you know that 9 out of 10 people that walk on a car lot had no intention of buying a car that day?
Oh my goodness.
That's a fact.
What makes this the scent, the triggers? That
The salesman, all right, take your, if you're married, take your wife to a furniture store, okay? She's getting pretty excited. I'm going to get a new couch, some lamps and tables. It's great for her. Maybe you just went in to buy a couch. All of a sudden, you're walking out with tables, lamps, coffee table, new bedroom suit. You get a little carried away.
Well, that's why you got to shop with the list. The research shows you curb your spending when you shop from a list.
Yeah.
If I go in, the reticular activating system in
Impulse
your brain.
buying.
Well, the reticular activating system helps with your nerve.
Yeah.
It's in your brainstem. It helps with your nerve, impulse activity, energy, arousal, goal setting. And so what it helps with is if you know that you're going in with the list, you're kind of reminding me of something I've done in the past too. You have the list, and the list helps you to stay organized, and I'm going to buy these things. And then you're not as distracted. I think minimizing the distractions and staying true and not getting...
It's like going to the grocery store hungry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. And here's another thing.
I'm guilty of this.
Here's another thing about controlling spending or whatever. There was a day when if you didn't get to the bank by 6:30 on Friday, that's all the money you had. Or she might have brought your check to the bank, your paycheck, cash. You took so much money out. That's what I'm going to spend for the weekend, prior to ATM machines, unless you used your credit card. But we didn't use credit cards like that back then. So you pretty much controlled what you spent by the decision you made on that Friday afternoon for the bank's
It
closed.
determined everything.
It determined everything. And you spent less. Now, you take some money out of the... You don't even worry about taking money out of the bank. We get direct deposit, everything. You just say, well, today I'm going to spend 80. Next day, you didn't think you're going to spend any. You take another 100 out of your ATM machine.
Well, your decisions based on what you... I love that you said this. Your decisions about when you need money, how you need money, how you spend. We were talking about in one of the other clips, which we encourage you to watch, the financial wisdom through the ages.
Yeah.
You understand it's the way that you spend money. We talked about it as you get older, and a lot of people, they're saying the millennial generation, you mentioned this too, a lot of people are working on experiences and not as much with material acquisition. You see more and more of a growing movement.
Sure.
But if you're already set materially, the way I look at things is if I have a furniture set, though it might be nice to have a new furniture set, I see no reason to replace my dining table for 30 years.
Yeah,
There's no reason. You've got to make these spending decisions in relation to the long term.
But going back, a lot of people spend
depends.
and buy things to get a fix, to get a rush.
So then
that doesn't really make them happy in the long run. Because they don't know what true happiness is. If you're spending and buying things to make yourself happy, it's just going to be an endless road of spending and debt.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yes. And my point about going to the bank on Friday, in your mind, you've made a mental list of what you're going to spend Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. You may not have written it down, but when you say, here's my paycheck, Miss Teller, put this much in and give me this much back.
I've done that.
That's how much I figured in my mind, because I've already planned what I'm pretty much going to do for the weekend, maybe padded at 20 or 40. That's how you did it back then.
But there's also the primacy in psychology and cognitive psychology, especially. They talk about the primacy and recency effects. So if you influence me, and that's the first thing I'm seeing in a series, in an item or list, I'll be influenced by that, but I'll also be influenced by the end, not the middle. So our decisions are kind of blinded, so to speak, in a way that is influenced by the primacy or recency of a situation. So what's interesting is to get that's why when you don't want to buy under impulse, they say write things down on a list, and then notice how 30 days later you don't want what you thought you wanted.
But why is our brain confused? Because we have more options these days.
Yes.
We have a lot more options and a lot more things to tempt us.
But visualizing how your life will be better
Yes.
because of it. You could still be better without it.
Sure.
But that will. I have a friend who wants to buy a projector. He's obsessed with the projector. He's gonna. I said, "Are you gonna use it every day?" Yeah. And he's discovering how to have the money for it and to buy it. And I think those kinds of things can actually help him to make a better
And,
decision.
and this goes back to, I've heard so many people say this year, when we go back to one of our other videos about downsizing as you get older, all the material things, you don't need them all. It's like, you buy something and 2 weeks later it's like, why did I buy this though? I really want it.
Or you regret the purchase.
It's like, yeah, so it's like you start living with less, but you start appreciating different things in your life,
But if you
opposed to material things.
but if you can make better decisions,
Agreed, yes.
so is that making sense? If you make better decisions based on why you're spending certain money, and then or for certain items, and then you deal with the consequences of having done it. So you don't blind yourself to the feelings of
Sure.
regret. You go ahead and say, I have this item that maybe I can donate now.
Sure.
Some people say to re-gift, but I mean, if it's a new item, you can decide what to do or give it to charity. Then what happens is you can go ahead and then you can make a different decision from that. But like we were talking about, buying a plane ticket and then you get those add-ons because they know you're more likely to spend. There's a whole host of responsibilities due to buying more,
Sure.
spending more. And so you got to ask yourself, is this what I want? Am I ready to deal with a whole host of decisions that come from this initial decision?
Same with date. You can relate this to dating. When you see somebody, whether at work, the gym, or anywhere out in society,
Right.
you initially say, I'm going to go out with her because she looks great. But
Right.
are you ready to take on her children, her lifestyle? And you get 2 or 3 weeks in and you're like, why did I do this?
Right.
Because you didn't evaluate the whole thing.
Right.
And maybe it could be you too. She didn't evaluate you. Maybe she doesn't like things about you. So it's about a value, not only what we spend, who we go out with, the type of job we take. It's everything.
It makes a big difference.
But then we learn from all that. That's why we're sitting here. We're not experts on everything. We're
What?
just we're basically passing on life experiences.
Right. Well, and hopefully the viewers are going to see something of benefit here with decision making. I almost think we need to do a part 2 on this.
Yes, because it's such a broad subject. And we would like people to comment and ask questions because I think it's such a broad scope here and it opens so many doors. There's got to be so many people out there this can help. Like I said, we're not experts, but we've lived a lot of this. We see it every day, don't we?
Oh, it
Because
makes
the
a big,
people that talk to us, it's amazing the people that talk to us about these things, isn't it?
oh, it's
That
incredible.
are looking for answers.
And so we want you to comment and subscribe below, and we're looking for answers from you too.
Yes.
And I want to
Dr.
thank Dr. Experience and Sanjay Paul, and
We appreciate you watching.
and so we probably will resume recording at a future point, and we'll write we'll do another
After
4 to
your
5
3
clips.
months in the Bahamas.
Right, I wish. But it would be nice to maybe one day, right? Maybe I can make that decision. But we'll get into more conversations on related topics, and we want to thank you for watching. And by the way, happy holidays.
Yes. Have a merry, safe Christmas and enjoy your family.
Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or
Remember,
other relevant
remember
holiday.
what's important around the holidays: family.
But now, and Happy New Year too, but and that is true, family and experiences and other things. But now you might be watching this at another time. So if there are any holidays, we hope you enjoy the holidays.
Happy 4th of July.
And other holidays. Well, thank you so much for watching.